30 degrees centigrade in Abuja. That's what it is right now, likely to rise up to about 38 degrees and may drop sometime later in the evening to about 26 degrees centigrade. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Nelta Igbe.
A very beautiful day indeed, and looking forward to the rains. The Easter celebration is over. It's hot in the nation's capital. We just need something to cool the place down. So we pray for the rains. Yes, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Kayla Megwa. And right there on your screens, you're looking at the beautiful city gate of Abuja. For those who travel, that is what they're going to be seeing as they come back to work. And if you live around Lugbe, you're probably having to look at this every single morning on your way to work. Beautiful area, greenery, lovely. But someone said on social media that I always like to point out the bad sides of things. They need lights in that area. We need street lights.
Well,
we need street lights in this part of the FCT. If anyone that can help us is listening, that area all the way down to the stadium.
Yes.
Pitch darkness at night.
Well, you know that when the generators are turned on, you get some light there. So the FCT minister and his team, please let's see what we can do about ensuring that the lights there are not just powered by generators. Solar-powered lights will go a long way, especially as it will also help the environment stay green and beautiful as it is. That's the city here on your screen. I don't know what Ayo will be looking at out there. Ayo?
Well, I'm also looking at some roads. This is a beautiful one, by the way. I'm also looking at some infrastructure in the city of Lagos, but this is definitely something. Good thing to know, at least there is no toll gate at this city gate, unlike a number of others. But I'm taking you somewhere this morning in Lagos. This is the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Call it a city gate of sorts into the city of Lagos. All right, as you approach Lagos City, you definitely have to go through this road to get into the city of Lagos. Mainly, this is the main arterial road into the city of Lagos. Of course, you can come in through Ogun State, some like 2 other avenues through which you can get into the city of Lagos through Ogun State. But this is the major road through which you can get into the city of Lagos. Built in the 70s, rehabilitated recently, and now fully operational. If you drive on this road, believe me, just do me a favor and be careful, because a very, very tempting one. The temperature in Lagos at this time is about 30 degrees, and it's feeling like 38. And as for coming down or dropping sometime later in the day, unless there is rain, Nelta, I don't see that happening in any city. But hey, we're better off than Sudan. I just saw a video where someone was frying an egg with the sun in Sudan. And we're asked to pray for Sudan. But no, thank God that's not our situation, at least here in Lagos, Nigeria, and perhaps even in the entire nation of Nigeria. Welcome. This is Lagos. I'm Ayo Makinde. Now, what's happening today, guys?
Plenty of things happening, and beautiful things too. You know, you talked about a city gate, but I was talking about a city gate with no gate. But in this case, you don't need a gate to resume work after the holiday. That's one of the things that's happening today. Work resumes. All of you that have been on holiday, get back to work. And let's keep this nation running and our economy on the path to recovery.
Very true. And of course, especially for people in Abuja, they travel quite a bit during the holidays. But of course, you have to make your way back in so we can get to work. And also happening today, a very historic inauguration, one that I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
A lot of people around Africa are very excited about this particular inauguration. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going to be attending this inauguration. That is the presidential inauguration of Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal. So very, he's 44 years old, turned 44 last week, Monday.
Okay.
Actually, his 2 beautiful wives, they are allowed to do that over there.
Okay.
So his 2 wives, and a country full of young people excited for governance. And a lot of people worried as well, because he is an outsider.
Outside of the political space.
Outside of the political space. He was a taxman.
Yeah. Okay, but as it is said, you can't be doing the same thing and expect a different result.
Absolutely.
So since he's coming from the outside, he'll probably come in with new ideas. He'll come in with new things. Well, at the end of the day, the whole idea is that Senegal, as a nation and her people, will move forward with this new administration. So, and as you said, our president's going to be there to welcome him into the fold of the ECOWAS heads of government, and that's happening today, right?
Yes, it is. It's happening today in Senegal. Ayo, what are your thoughts on the 44-year-old?
Well, my thought is that, first of all, here, you said he's a taxman. That means he's a businessman. And that's one of the highlights of our Business Morning on Sunrise Daily today. Young people are in a lot of business, mostly small businesses, and that is the focus of Business Morning on Sunrise Daily today, the business opportunities for small businesses, particularly within the Nigeria and U.S. trade space. In the meantime, time for us to dash straight into what the papers are saying this morning. Here again are a look at some of the papers today. The first work day of the second quarter in 2024, April 2nd. Let's begin with the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And what does it lead with? Banks need 4.7 trillion naira to scale CBN's new capital hurdle. And look at the riders. No bank qualifies under new guidelines. ETI, Zenith, Access, First Bank lead in eligible capital. 7 qualify by adding retained earnings. No need to panic, as ascribed to ACAM. Find the details of that on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. There's an interesting piece of news under the picture on the front page. Okwama, how soldiers, villagers died. That's ascribed to an eyewitness. Says Bayelsa militant leader Amagbe, not from Okwama, notes leaders from Okoloba led the army to Okwama, reveals the conspiracies, what transpired on March 14, allow Okwama to bury the dead. That is ascribed to residents. Find the details of that again on the inside pages of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Naira gains 660 Naira on $7 billion FX backlog clearance. BDC's return. You see that there's some parenthesis around that. Find the details of who said it on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Switch to Nigerian News Direct, also talking business, financial stability. CPPE gives nod to CBN's recapitalization plan to safeguard depositors' funds. What does that mean? Look at the writer. Says inflationary challenges drive endorsement of bank recapitalization. Non-performing loans remain below threshold, reflecting positive bank performance. That's ascribed to CBN. Expresses concern over high interest rate spreads in Nigerian banking system. Find the meaning of that on the inside pages of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Switch to Business Day. Also talking business, of course. CBN rate hikes boost bonds allure for pension funds. The details of that on the front page, and it continues on the inside pages. The Guardian newspaper is talking about how FX duty rates, disparity, shipping charges compound inflation. Well, you get some kind of inkling on the front page with the infographics that you see right there. The details of that, all of the story, on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Daily Trust newspaper is talking about petrol subsidy removal. 10 months after, FG yet to roll out electric vehicles. Energy crisis threatens project. Charging stations inadequate in states. Experts task governors on infrastructure. About time, wouldn't you say? The details of that story continues on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. New Telegraph leads with renewed hope. Anti-corruption fight will spare no one. That's ascribed to EFCC chair. Says agency has arraigned 2 ex-governors in 2 months. Will go after mega thieves in holistic manner. Debunks reports that they target only internet fraudsters. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the New Telegraph this morning.
Blueprint is next, and it is talking about development. Look at it. Arewa think tank on 2027. North desires infrastructure, education, not political power. Says so far, Tinubu is committed to developing the region. PWD's rally support for government. All of that story is packed on the front page. More details on the inside page. And as you can see, there's several other stories you'll find interesting on the front page of Blueprint newspaper today. This Nigerian newspaper is talking about troops neutralize terrorists in Northwest region. That's its lead story today. Intercept illicit drugs in Ogun, says Army. Suspected herdsman kidnaps shelter. All of that story is packed on page 15 of this Nigeria newspaper this morning, along with several other stories. Look at right above that story. You'll find Coca false distribution of palliatives by states lawmakers. It's no solution to current hardship. That story is, the writer is ascribed to Governor Diri. All of that you'll find on page 4 of this Nigeria newspaper this morning. Daily Times newspaper has this on its front page. How we are lobbying FG to secure release of Kanu. That's ascribed to Kalu. Urges support for Tinubu, says he means well for Ndibo. All of that story you'll find on page 4 of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. Leadership newspaper has this as its lead. Ambassadorial list. Experts raise concern over delayed posting. Find that story on page 4. Look at the writers. It's dangerous to leave foreign missions vacant. Ascribed to ex-envoys. Say delay affecting foreign investments, national interests. And someone says it's the prerogative of Mr. President. Who said it? Switch to page 4 of the Leadership newspaper this morning for all the details. And look at the Nigerian Tribune. The lead story is about education. Teacher shortage in primary schools hits 194,876. Wow. That's according to UBEC. Look at the writer. Some schools in rural areas have 2 or 3 teachers. NUT expresses worry. Most certainly worrying. That story is on page 3, among several other stories, including that picture of merrymakers, children having fun during the Easter holiday in Ibadan. That was yesterday. And with the Nigerian Tribune, we come to a close of a look at some of the papers today. What is your own take? Send us a mail. We'll be glad to read.
Kate, for me, looking at the headlines in some of the national dailies today, one of them that really strikes me, especially as it concerns the economy, is what we have on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Look at how FX duty rate disparity, shipping charges compound inflation. So see this. First of all, you have the customs import duty exchange rate, which is different from the parallel market foreign exchange rate. So customs duty exchange rate is 1,303. The parallel market is 1,250 to the dollar. So when you see these kind of things, you wonder, so what would those that are bringing in raw materials that they need for the manufacturing, how do they even cope with all of this? So they have to get the dollar at a certain rate. In bringing the goods they are bringing in, then pay a certain rate, a different rate from whatever they are paying. It's just too many. And then look at the other charges. Shipping line charges at the port. Shipping line import fee. Nigerian port freight additional recovery fee, port and terminal charges. Amazing. Free parking rent period, total parking rent, terminal handling charge, terminal slave delivery charge. I almost said slavery there. VAT at 7.5%, stamp duty, terminal documentation, among others. These are all the amount of charges that those that are bringing goods are using the port would have to deal with. How then do we expect things to be cheap?
I mean, if you talk to people who are in that sector, people who do business, it's almost as though everything is put in place to ensure they don't thrive. Almost like it weeds out so many people. There's so many people who want to be able to participate in this, who cannot. You just can't handle that. What are you going to do?
And this is supposed to be for just importation of materials or whatever. But even I understand that there are even charges that are hidden charges for those who are trying to export. And yet we have agencies that are trying to promote exports from this country. And
we're trying to talk about ease of doing business. These are some of the issues with the ease of doing business in Nigeria.
Let's look at how we can clear the port real quick. So that's a major one for me from the Guardian newspaper.
I mean, I think what stood out for me today was from the Vanguard, and it's interesting that we talked about business today. Banks, this CBN's recapitalization. I'm going to take the most interesting headline for me today from the Vanguard newspaper. Banks need 4.7 trillion naira to scale CBN's new capital hurdle. Now, this is in a bid to ensure that they protect the funds of depositors in banks. Now, no bank qualifies, according to the Vanguard here, no bank qualifies under the new guidelines. ETI, Zenith, Access, First Bank lead in eligible capital, and 7 qualify by adding retained earnings, no need to panic. So that's a very interesting bit there. How many banks are going to survive this particular move?
Well, Kayla, as we wind down the look at these papers, I don't know if I has any other things to add. I'll just say this. There might have to be mergers. Of course, it's expected that there will be mergers, there will be coming together, there will be takeovers, all in a bid for the banking institution in Nigeria to survive. If you do remember what the central bank said about this, it's just so that they stabilize the structure, ensure that they are standing
and
solid for whatever, and protect the depositors' funds and all of that.
Well, what stands out for me, guys, is on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, and I'm very, very concerned. You know, we've been talking quite a number of times about out-of-school children. But how about schools without teachers? That's the lead story of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Kayla, from time to time, we talk about out-of-school children. And it's really, really very concerning that we have almost 200,000 teacher shortage in the country. And that information is not coming from anyone else. It's coming from UBEC, the Universal Basic Education Commission. And that is something that should give us all concern, you know, because at some point, we even understand that at the levels of early childhood care development education and junior secondary schools, they appear to have more teachers than they required. But overall, especially at the primary school level, we have a shortage of almost 200,000 teachers. And it is official data coming from UBEC. And I don't know if that is a problem for the federal government to solve or for the state governments to give attention to. This information is sourced from what they call the National Personnel Audit Report. And it is something that should give us all concern, sincerely. We talk about out-of-school children, we talk about kidnapping and all those things, and here we have it. In fact, we understand that in some rural areas, teachers are as few as 2 to 3 in a school. How many students are there in the class? I don't know who should give attention to this and whether or not we're really concerned about education or we're concerned about the future of this country. For me, that's the most concerning thing this morning, Nyota.
Really deep and really concerning that the thing is this, some will say that teaching is no longer as attractive as it used to be. There was a time that we know that people longed to be teachers. They wanted to graduate from school and become teachers to pass on knowledge to the younger generation. But no, that's not the situation. Now, ask any average Nigerian student right now, what would you like to be in future? You will not hear anyone tell you, I want to be a teacher, or I want to go to the classroom. You hear them tell you, I want to work in an oil company, or I want to go to the bank, or I want to leave the country, or I want to jackpot. But funny enough, you find out that many of them jackpot, and they go and teach abroad. They go to schools there, they go to school, and they end up teaching, all in a bid to survive. But back home here, nobody wants to teach, or hardly would you find people who say, I want to teach. That's because the teaching profession is not as attractive as it used to be. The respect that the teachers enjoy
and
before,
the remuneration.
The remuneration is no longer what it used to be. But you know, Kayla, my dad, God bless his soul, passed on as a teacher.
My mom's still a teacher.
And it was something they looked forward to. I mean, the pride That's the teacher's son. In the way you're walking in the community, that's the teacher's son.
Couldn't exactly misbehave in the community.
But hey, whatever it is, let's do what we can. While we're looking at the out-of-school children, let's look at how to bring the teachers back into the schools so that our education system can get back to what it ought to be. But having said that, that's all we're adding the look at some of the daily today summaries. We'll be back in a moment to get into our conversation. Just stay with us.
Senior executives face local macroeconomic turbulence and global geopolitical upheavals. Don't worry, Texam UK got your back. A transformative journey with Texam Strategies for Sustainable Organizational Success Program, April 24 to 25, 2024, in Lagos will position you and your organization for these challenges. Our interactive sessions, games, assessment, and peer-to-peer learning are unique with a great faculty led by John Peters, former chair, Association of MBAs and ex-prisoner of war, delivering actionable insights for you to navigate uncertainties and thrive. Pay 3,155,250 Naira by March 15th for your spot and enrich your leadership skills in resilience, innovation, and sustainable growth. Apply now via +44 7425 883 791 or exec@texam.co.uk. It's a strategic opportunity to win. Texam, insights that inspire, actions that change the world.
Modern lifestyle requires a lot of energy, backed up by intense production processes, which impact the environment in more ways than one.
The world has realized that you cannot deal with climate change without looking at loss of biodiversity.
On Echo Africa, nature speaks and the discerning mind becomes champion of sustainable living.
One thing we want to do is to change public behavior around recycling.
Watch Echo Africa on Channels Television and find out what nature is saying.
How does double digits affect your purchasing power? What about ballooning debt profile and scarce FX? How's that affecting your business?
The federal government is turning to the money market to fund this deficit. Are yields contracting or expanding? Is this a good buy for you?
Inflation drives MPC decisions and affects sentiment at the equities market. What is happening to your investment?
Or would you rather go digital? We track all the volatility in the crypto market.
Get the answers from the business team every weekday at 1 p.m. on Business Incorporated, only on Channels Television.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
A little over a week ago, Senegal witnessed a significant event in its political landscape as opposition candidate Diomaye Faye emerged victorious in the presidential elections. Now, this outcome has been hailed as a positive development not only for Senegal, but also for West Africa as a whole. The presidential elections, initially slated for February the 25th, but postponed indefinitely by President Macky Sall, finally took place on March the 24th after much anticipation. On the 27th, Mr. Diomaye Faye was officially declared the winner with over 54% of the votes in the first round, making him the youngest president-elect in Senegal's history. Now, this victory sends a strong signal of democratic stability and progress in West Africa, particularly at a time when several member states of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have been grappling with unconstitutional changes of government. Nigeria's president has commended this development as a testament to the vitality of democracy in the sub-region, further bolstering his stance. As President-elect Faye prepares to assume office and take his oath of office on the 2nd of April, there's optimism that his leadership will bring fresh ideas, energy, and aspirations to Senegal's governance. His presidency is seen as embodying the hopes of the younger generation and may pave the way for a new trend of youthful leadership across Africa, ushering in transformative change. President Bola Tinubu, as chairman of the ECOWAS Commission, will be there in Dakar to welcome him into the ECOWAS fold of heads of government. From Abuja, Lanre Lasese for Channels Television News.
Yes, welcome back. Our colleague there, Lanre Lasese, giving us a preview of what's likely to happen in Senegal today when the president-elect Diomaye Faye gets inaugurated. Of course, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu is going to be there to receive the youngest president Senegal has had in a long while, I think, into the fold of the ECOWAS heads of government. But back in our studio, let's look at what has the president and his team, what have they been able to achieve since inauguration? The policies, the economic policies, are they what Nigerians had hoped for? And what are the expectations like? Joining us in the studio here, we have Professor Tunde Olusunle, who's a professor of creative writing and author and a former special assistant to the president between 1999 and the year 2007. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Before you came in, we looked at some of the papers. I want you to start up on this one here. And I think the Nigerian Tribune, to be precise, so that gave an overview of the number of out of class teachers there, teachers that are lacking across the schools, and that's coming from UBEC. Almost 200,000 teachers are needed to fill the gaps in our education system, especially at the basic education level. You being a teacher, how does that sound to you?
Well, thank you for having me in your studio this morning. It's actually a worrying trend because if we didn't have the opportunity of instruction by our teachers, we wouldn't be here. But I think a lot actually went wrong at some point with the devolution of some of these powers, to the lower levels. You find a situation where, for instance, funding for salaries for the running of schools get to people at the level of local government chairman, and a lot of these things want to be privatized, as it were, and prioritized over and above, the engagement of instructors and, supporting them at that level. Unfortunately, teachers will rank among the most penurious, in our socioeconomy today, which is actually very disturbing. And, we have to nip this in the bud, much as we have all the things that we're contending with. But, we cannot move forward as a country if we are thinking of breeding an illiterate generation, so it's a disturbing trend.
I mean, when we take a look at the sector in itself, the education sector in Nigeria, there's quite a lot that needs to be done. One of the major, when everyone looks at it right now, what they run to, first of all, is security, and the Safe School Initiative comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But you see, when we look at, generally, the policies of President Bola Tinubu and how it has impacted the education sector, from someone who works in that sector, are there ways that we can say, some of the policies, some of the economic policies of the president have impacted positively or even negatively on the education sector?
I think, in a number of areas, he inherited, pursuits that were embarked upon by, his predecessors. I go back, for instance, to several agreements and, collaborations between, say, ASU, the Association of University Lecturers, and the federal government on the other hand. You find an example, for instance, where government decided to withhold the payment of teachers the other time when they went on strike. And, they've been doing something like piecemeal, refund to them. This does not give, requisite encouragement to teachers. Well, yes, a process has been started. But you find that, for instance, at the level of, schools at the state level, the situation may be worse. I go, for instance, to my state. I'm from Kogi. We were barely managing the only university in the state, years back, before the last administration came, and, just in 2 years, set up 2 other universities. Now, how do you cope? You're not paying those that were there. You are not providing infrastructure in the existing university, and then you are expanding the scope. So at the end of the day, what are you going to have, for instance, for development? People try to, miniaturize education just to structures or, to nominal confinements. And it goes beyond that. You have to put, institutions that can be sustainable. And, your own internal system must be able to generate something, to fund whatever you do set up. It's beyond bragging rights when you say, oh, I have 3 state universities, in my state. What is the state of the universities? What is the condition of the universities? Because you find, outward gravitations, where people have a chance. You're in the state university, if there are opportunities in the federal, you leave. And, in a whole lot of instances, people who move that way are almost not always replaced. Yeah. The private universities also provide all kinds of opportunities, So it's a mixed bag.
One would think that, looking at when you say the outward movement, you're moving from state to federal. Mm-hmm. One would think that with the unification, for instance, of the naira, when this administration came on, there was that announcement of the unification of the exchange rate by the president, and there was a lot of reaction to that. A lot of people were happy, while others were like, "Come on, it's not working for us." One would think that issues like salaries, emolument across board would be looked at. Indeed, while the conversation is still on about whether minimum or living wage, while that conversation is still on, one would think that these things are things that should be looked at and focused on to ensure that there is no, how do you say it now, there is no need to want to, let me move out here because it's better on that side, but it's all together.
Because the funding capacities of the federal government differs from the states and the local government areas. I have university vice chancellors who are my friends. And the other day, one of them took a snapshot of his payslip and sent to me. Vice Chancellor, Federal University, he earned 701,000 naira. All emoluments embedded there. Federal University. I can tell you for free that the situation is worse or lesser in state universities compared to federal universities.
I'm sorry, 701,000 naira monthly?
Yeah. For professor. I'm talking of a professor.
That's over 500,000 naira.
It is, yes.
So 701,000 naira every month.
Everything, yeah. All his allowances put together.
Okay.
As vice chancellor. I don't know what the salary of a permanent secretary is now, but it would be good to look at it, for instance.
You think that's very low?
I think it's low. Well, government should do more. What is the value of a naira now? What we mean, therefore, is that vice chancellor, cannot buy more than 2 bags of rice for his family before he buys other items, fixes his generator, fixes his electricity, manages his borehole in his house. So where does it come to?
What would you think a perfect salary would be for a professor?
Maybe not perfect. Maybe we should say a working salary. A professor in Nigeria should earn between 1.5 to 2 million naira.
Every month?
Yeah. Because of what they put in here. I was brought up by teachers, and, I'm here today. You went to school. Yeah. It's a different situation. Post-graduation, 39 years ago, I taught in the secondary school. I got a job because I studied English, and there were vacancies for English teachers. My salary was 374 naira. 374. So years later, when I had an opportunity to go to the Daily Times, which was going to pay me about 600 and something, or 700 and something, I didn't blink. I took my bag and I left. It was better on the other side. Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the other policies of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu time in office, and how they've impacted. So we'll have a proper conversation about how they've impacted several other sectors apart from the education sector. Unification of the Naira, that's something that has happened. The inauguration of the Economic Council. Of course, we also talked the removal of the CBN governor, that happened as well. Managing the float of the Naira, removal of fuel subsidy, of course, which is one that has impacted the country in such an immense way. Dissolution of governing boards of federal government parastatals, the suspension of the EFCC chair, we saw that happen earlier in his time in office, appointment of the National Security Advisor, retirement of the service chiefs and appointment of new ones, and of course the signing of the Electricity, Student Loan and Data Protection Acts, respectively. Respectively, rather. So let's talk a bit about these policies. Have they been... I mean, we're seeing a lot of people in the country complaining about how their standard of living has gone down, but there's the promise of El Dorado. Is it something that is going to happen? Do you think that this days of suffering will ultimately lead to days of celebration?
Maybe not in the short run, because we've packed so much there, and government tells us at every stop about the kind of liabilities that they inherited. Some of these things will have to be rolled over, before, things can begin to happen genuinely. Yes, for instance, government has also responded to the issue of the flotation of the Naira, trying to, stem the tide, as it were. This, again, is an ongoing process. This is April 2nd. Where are we going to be on April 30, on that note, for instance? We talked about... the service chiefs who are still trying to grapple with the security situation. Unfortunately, we've also had, incidents, of the killing of soldiers, in the line of state security, as it were. Well, we are hoping that moving forward, the requisite the requisite empowerment of the military to deal with the security situation, in its various ramifications, insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, militancy. We hope that they're able to grapple with this. But sometimes I feel myself that our military looks a bit stretched. And they are not supposed to be the first in the line for internal security, for instance.
Should be the police.
Yes, so how are we, helping the police to grow? During the Second Republic, the Shagari government, President Shehu Shagari built the police through Sunday Adewusi in such a way that indeed the military was scared. But, looks like there was a downscaling, of provisions for the police and, governmental patronage by way of subventions in latter administrations. So you find that, our policemen they are threadbare. Somebody just drops a bomb in the truck containing policemen, where he just dropped firecrackers. Understand? Look at the other day in Delta, 12 policemen were killed, initially reported missing, then confirmed killed. So how are we then going? We need to strengthen the police to be able to do their own job, so that that's especially on issues of internal security. Let's see more of our military, doing their own duties in the area of containment of militancy, insurgency, and all that, in relevant places. You talked about a new regime in the CBN, yeah, and they are still trying to settle. Maybe we'll give them a little time and see how they go. But of course, the fact also has to be made that there have been fits and starts in some of the things that government has been doing. I take the example, for instance, of the student loans. It was long announced. A preliminary appropriation was made, and of course, which was considered small, minuscule, relative to what we need to do. Because we're talking about education here, and talking about how you want to, help the young people by way of bursaries and loans to go to school. So, we really have to be serious about that beyond pronouncements and platitudes.
Well, in all of these things, for one who's been there and seen how the president operated, I mean, you were a special assistant to the president. One would think that this administration looks set to change things in the sense that while the previous administrations boxed up departments or ministries, this administration has kind of like opened them up, giving for, as they will say, I mean, the special advisor to the president, Amida, called it specialization, so that they're able to do better and impact more on the policies that go. But you don't think that's...
Well, the journey has just started. 4 years, which is the first term, is barely 10, 11 months. So we need to give gestation some time and see how it all works. I told you before, there have been, forts and backs on issues. I'll give you another example. Somebody was appointed to the board of the CBN and removed almost immediately because there was affiliation to another party. So more thinking through has to be done. That's what we know. You're supposed to do all kinds of checks, security checks, and indeed integrity tests at the level of, who is here. Is this somebody that's going to be on the job for 1 week and then we suddenly discover that the person didn't do NYC?
So more background.
Absolutely.
As to the people who are implementing these policies.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at something that happened recently. Everyone is talking about this looting that happened in Kebbi State, and it's not the first time we're seeing this. It's almost becoming a trend, looting of food trucks. And everyone is blaming it on, the poverty in the land. And then, of course, there's the fact that palliatives are being rolled out. We're seeing that happening everywhere, even though there's looting going on. But there are lots of palliatives. There are people who oppose, the distribution of palliatives from the state governments. We saw Bishop Hassan Kuka recently basically saying this is undignifying to get people to line up for food. What do you make of it? The economic situation is what it is. You said that's going to take some time. We have to wait for it to happen. In the meantime, these palliatives are being rolled out. Is it undignifying? Is that something else? Is there any other way this could have been done?
There's a background to the poverty situation. What were the governors, for instance, in Kebbi, in similar places, what did their predecessors do? Cheap money from the center has made different levels of government very lazy and lax, because every month they come to Abuja here, they get money from the Federation Allocation Accounts Committee, and governors in many instances warehouse this. They invite bureau de change operators, and they convert this to forex, and they leave their states to languish. So along the line of this cheap money from petrodollars, we forgot basics like agriculture, for instance. I mean, we were first an agrarian people before we became an oil-producing nation. Over time, administration from administration, they've always encouraged agriculture. Former President Obasanjo, when he was head of state, had Operation Feed the Nation. When it got to the time of Shagari, things like that were done. I'm saying this because the palliatives that are being shared now, which is causing crisis, we probably would have avoided that situation if we did more in the past. And, this is where I'm going. The other day, the governor of Niger State, Mohamed Bago, told us that he has already cleared 1 million hectares of land for agriculture. That's a serious governor. And we saw the farm equipment they've bought. Days later, we saw the same governor at table with Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos signing an agreement. Lagos State will buy off, substantially from whatever is produced from Niger State. Lagos State may not have the acreage, the land area. These are the things that we
But they have the consumers.
Exactly. Before now, there used to be one rice in Lagos they called Lake Rice. It was Lagos and Kebbi. Now it's going Niger. So these are safeguards that we need to have built before this time.
Ayo?
Thank you, Kayla. Prof, the question that comes to my mind readily about this matter when we are talking about states, since we are talking about President Tinubu's policies, is whether or not states have policies and how those policies of the states align with the FG's policies so that there can be expeditious results that people can see quickly. It's that area of collaboration that I think some people might also want to understand whether or not you see states having policies and that those policies are known by the people and that they align with the federal government. I don't know if you can hear what I'm saying, Prof.
Probably have to go through again, Ayo.
Okay, so I'm asking the question of collaboration. You have talked about states and what has the historical antecedents, things that they are done or not done before now, which is the background, as you say, to poverty. But then since we are talking about President Tinubu's policies, in what ways do you think the policies of states, whether they have or not, align with the federal government's policies in the various areas in which the federal government policies are known to the people? Many people may not even know that states also have policies the way federal government has policies. What's your take on that alignment or misalignment, as the case may be?
Thank you. It becomes, I think it stands to reason that, the tail cannot be wagging the head. There has to be synergy between the federal government and the state government. At many levels, for instance, you see that, there are statutory collaborations. We have the National Council of States, decided over by the president and the governors. We have the National Economic Council. We have things at that level. We have the National Agricultural Council, So, I mean, things are supposed to titrate, both by way of ideas and implementation. The two sides can borrow from each other. I gave the example of Niger, but even before now, we had an example in Kwara State when Bukola Saraki was governor. There were the Zimbabwean farmers who were displaced, from Zimbabwe. And, Saraki made space available for them in Shunga area, of Kwara State. And they developed so well that they indeed had a helipad there, Now, that is something to be emulated. So that was there. Bago of Niger State is doing something. David Umahi did something similar, maybe on a lower scale, when he was a Bonny governor. So, these are things that, we have to find a way to, to merge the top and the middle. Let me not call the state the bottom now, the top and the middle, so that we can service everybody. I think in one of the president's pronouncements, for agri-development, some, there were specified acreages of land that were supposed to be, developed for various projects. That is like a template that the federal government, has given. So, but I mean, the states are supposed to now develop.
Well, there's something you said, Prof.
Policy that says,
my apologies, my sincere apologies for butting in. You said something very striking. You said there needs to be that collaboration. Are you suggesting that there is no collaboration between the federal government and states right at this moment?
There may be, but unfortunately, you see, because of the quasi-independence that the states also have, with all due respect, you can also have errant governors and, people at that level. People that are not synergizing with what is happening in space. Everybody conceives of himself, as a mini-god in his environment, And we have to note, by the way, that we're not in a military regime. So, if you come under the platform of, XY party, that is not necessarily the ruling party, you may decide to do things a bit differently in your place. But, if service to the people, if the interest of the people is what we have at heart, then, we have to find a way, to work together so that, we serve them properly.
Is it a challenge of understanding or a challenge of resources, or perhaps that of communication or marketing of those ideas by the federal government to the states so that they can own it as something that needs to go to Nigeria? Because there can be no Nigeria without the states.
Absolutely. But like I told you again, I mean, you can only push the horse to a point. Are you going to force him you're not going to force the horse to drink, So the system, like I said earlier, we have to find congruencies. We have to find meeting and melting pots in the general interest of the people. Sometimes, I said this earlier and with all due respect, once these governors are inherited, they have full security cover, and they are there moving around with their sirening convoys. They don't feel an obligation, even to their people there. There's a governor who just got out of office the other day in January, somewhere here in the North Central, who has not been seen since the day he handed over, because he's avoiding the EFCC. So he stays put in the government house where he has been for the past 8 years, as a surrogate now of the person he tried to install. So are we going to say that that kind of a person, was working in tandem with what the federal government would have expected or advised? So there are these exceptions, and it hurts at the end of the day.
So how then do we take this forward, Prof? Because unless that collaboration happens at the various state levels and regional levels, because there are those who have also advocated some kind of regional collaboration among the states, unless those collaborations happen, how quickly can we get to Uhuru or even get anywhere near Uhuru?
Is that moving forward now, we have to be very, very serious as a people, as a country, about leadership grooming and leadership recruitment process. People talk about recruitment. You cannot just go to the street and recruit. You have to know the quality of who you are recruiting. So, we have to take an interest in grooming, leaders of tomorrow. We sat in the council hall in the State House many years ago, and we were addressed there by President Obasanjo. And as at that time, he said to us, people say, I have many aides, special advisors, special assistants, and personal assistants. That for him, as the precursor of the Fourth Republic, it was important that leaders be groomed. So if you find people, for instance, who have, pedigrees and have the experience, things will move better. With all due respect, in some particular instances, we find that the quality of leadership at the level of the state has actually been degenerating. We find states that have been able to stabilize. They've ensured some kind of, quality from one governor to the other. Donald Duke did a very good template in Cross River State. He was succeeded there by Liali Moke, before Ben Ayade came. There are instances like that. And these are people that have pedigree, so aligning with government policy, understanding, appreciating, and being able to interpret to their people, wouldn't be a problem. But there are, unfortunately, there are also freestyle politicians who, just come in with the money on the day of the primary, buy up the process, and have enough resources to rig the election. And so they are administering people who, in their heart of hearts, they didn't put them in office.
You're making quite a lot of accusations. No. I'm going to take you up on these accusations, Prof. We'll start with the one you said in Kogi State. Are you saying that Governor Yahya Bello has still been in the government house? Is that what you're alluding to?
Well, that's what we read. And, he's been cited in a few instances, on the entourage of his successor, But I didn't mention his name. I just said Kogi State.
Yes, but you just mentioned his name now. Okay, so that's an interesting point to note there, and I'm also going to take you up on a lot of other things. Let's talk about security agencies, because we need to cover the policies in their entirety. So let's start with these thefts that are increasing despite the militarization of some oil-producing regions. Okwama community, saw that very unfortunate story that, the whole country is still mourning. But what do you make of that situation? How are the security agencies performing if oil theft is still going on? We're seeing that happening across the South. Mm-hmm. And then we're also seeing the killings of a lot of these security agencies.
I think we have
what do you think is going on here?
I think we just have to develop the political will to police our natural resources. Stories are told about the first-time discovery of oil in Oloibiri, Bayelsa, close to 70 years ago. By now, I imagine that artificial intelligence will actually help us to track some of these things and minimize physical contact by our security people. How much land can they, how much ground can they cover in the creeks? You know, I'm sure, may their soul rest in peace. If our soldiers that were killed, you know, were like in an open field and facing one another, the situation might have been different in Okwama. You know, I mean, but like I said, we have to find a way of making sure that we are able, by satellite or something, to see what is happening. You know, there can be a command center, the headquarters of the NNPC. There are things for us to learn in countries which also produce oil, but which don't have the kind of problems that we're facing here. Yeah.
A very interesting dynamic that we're facing here in the country. Before we let you leave this studio, I want to pick you on those things that you said. Because do you have proof that Governor Yaya Bello is hiding in the State House in Kogi State? We've not. You said he's staying there and he's hiding from EFCC. I didn't tell you. You did.
I said
you
the
said
last
this.
governor.
Yes. His name is Yaya Bello.
Yeah, and you know his name?
Yes, yes. The country knows his name.
Okay.
So you said he's inside the government house and that he's hiding from EFCC. Do you have proof of this, Prof?
Okay, well, that is what we read in the papers. You know, and of course, we don't see him attending events. For somebody who was busy there for 8 years, you imagine he should be, winding down now. We should see him at ceremonials and all that, you know, but I mean, you cannot just fit like that for somebody who was otherwise larger than life.
You know, while we're still, you're still asking the questions why a man who was larger than life is hardly seen these days. Maybe he might be doing like, what do you say now? Looking back, retrospecting, as in how did I do? Checking, weighing his own effort, what he has done, what he has done. But in the midst of all of that, yes, Kayla asked you the question about oil theft and what the soldiers are doing and all of that. But let's look at the mindset of the Nigerians and how they react to the operations of the security agencies, the operations of these ones who have taken the oath to give their lives for the protection of the nations. There used to be that thing when we see a uniform in Nigeria, everybody is like, yes, they are protecting us. But now, there's little or no regard for the uniforms. Why do you think that's...
There's been a lot of watering down. Last year, I was, you know, about the time we're having a similar upsurge, and I was thinking in my mind, wow, once upon a time, Nigeria was the policeman of the West Coast. Nigeria woke up one day under General Babangida with Liberia tearing at itself. You remember the Charles Taylor insurgency and all that. And Nigeria led other countries to constitute ECOMOG. You know, we pulled 10 countries together, and Nigeria did the bulk of the funding. And, you know, we did so well that indeed the United Nations also told Nigeria to exercise oversight in neighboring Sierra Leone, which was in turmoil, and in Guinea as well. You know, and, you know, my mind just went to that role of Nigerian, you know, generals. I particularly like General Samuel Victor Leo Malu, you know, who it was who enforced peace, as it were, and conducted elections. I don't see where I don't know whether we still have the Dogon Yaros today, the Shagayas today, the Malus, the Kukulachis. I don't know whether they are there anymore. Yeah. So we still have a lot of capacity building to do at that level.
Professor Tunde Olusunle, Professor of Creative Writing and former Special Assistant to the President between 1999 and the year 2007. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And Kayla?
Well, I think we do have to get ready for business on our side, but there is a live coverage.
Not yet. They've not started.
Oh, they've not started it yet?
We'll just, as I would say, walk into the business studio.
Okay, so Ini, we're getting ready to come to you right now. And I think she's going to be talking about this recapitalization of banks, which is one of the headlines that we saw from the Vanguard newspaper today. So we're looking forward to that one. And we'll be handing over to the business crew shortly, and Sunrise Daily will continue immediately afterwards. So stay with us.
Indeed, Kayla and Nelsa, thank you so much. And yes, welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily here at the Business Studio in Lagos. Well, we start as usual from the global space where oil prices rose on Tuesday, underpinned by signs that demand may improve in China and the United States, the world's biggest oil consumers, and growing concerns of a widening conflict in the Middle East that could affect supply from a region. Taking a close look at the numbers right there, we see for Brent, it's up 0.77%. It's been a while since we've seen this, so a whole lot of factors squeezing supply, and of course once supply is squeezed we see prices going up. So it's up 0.77% at 87. Could this be good for Nigeria? $87.83 a barrel. And then for WTI from the United States, it's up 0.82% at $84.12 a barrel. And as I've told you before, we've seen that numbers coming from the United States, and also manufacturing activity in China expanded for the very first time in 6 months. And we know that China is a major driver of oil demand globally. So once they demand for more and supply is being squeezed, we tend to see more greens around the number. US is the biggest consumer. And also very important, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, that's OPEC Plus, will hold an online meeting of its Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee tomorrow, Wednesday, to review the market and members' implementation of that output cut, which they have been doing. All right, so that live event that Kayla was talking about is coming on now. It's the minister of the FCT holding a media brief with some media executive, and it's that now in Abuja. But that's for the DSTV viewers. So for the rest of us on our local platform and our UK platform, we'll continue with Business Morning. So DSTV, bye-bye for now.
This is a live Channels television event.
Appropriation will immediately go in for the necessary things in terms of infrastructure. We are still on with the 2023 appropriation, which has been extended. The national budget was extended to June this year, and ours too